Una mañana tranquila en el campo, la luz suave del sol se extiende por todo el espacio. Tieu-nu y su hijo Dui iban camino a visitar a la madre adoptiva de Truong, una mujer de corazón generoso y alma cálida. Pero esa vida pacífica se vio interrumpida cuando se encontraron nuevamente con Truong, a quien no habían visto en mucho tiempo. Todo parecía en calma, pero en ese momento las emociones intensas afloraron y todo cambió de repente. ¿Podrá el amor entre ellos superar los desafíos? Los secretos que aún no se han revelado los obligarán a enfrentar decisiones importantes. ¿Será esto el inicio de una nueva vida o un giro del destino? Todo se revelará en esta historia donde el amor, el perdón y las decisiones difíciles se entrelazan. No te lo pierdas, momentos que cambiarán sus vidas están por venir. Cuando el amanecer apenas comenzaba a asomar, los suaves rayos dorados del sol naciente se filtraban entre las hojas iluminando el suelo y creando un paisaje cálido y tranquilo. Tieu-nu, vestida con ropa sencilla pero elegante, llevaba en sus manos una canasta de mimbre llena de dulces que ella misma había preparado mientras caminaba por el camino solitario junto a su hijo Dui. Dui, el niño con los ojos brillantes y la sonrisa inocente, apretaba la mano de su madre corriendo alegremente sobre la tierra suave. El aire fresco y puro de la mañana calmaba el alma de quien lo respiraba. El canto de los pájaros desde lejos, fusionado con la suave brisa que pasaba, creaba una melodía natural que llenaba el corazón de Tieu-nu de paz. Miraba a su hijo observando los rasgos de inocencia y curiosidad en su rostro. El niño no dejaba de admirar todo a su alrededor, como si quisiera explorar toda la belleza del mundo. La luz del amanecer iluminaba la piel suave de Dui, haciéndolo parecer un pequeño ángel en medio de la naturaleza. Ambos continuaron su camino en ese espacio tranquilo, solo interrumpido por el sonido de las hojas crujiendo bajo sus pies y las aves que volaban por el cielo. Los árboles de un verde intenso se inclinaban de vez en cuando con la dirección del viento, creando curvas suaves como si estuvieran saludando a Tieu-nu y a Dui. El camino del pueblo tranquilo y sereno parecía una pintura de acuarela, donde todo transcurría lentamente en paz sin prisas. Tieu-nu sentía una paz interior como si cada paso la alejara más de las preocupaciones de la vida diaria. Los sonidos a su alrededor le recordaban que la vida seguía su curso, aunque a veces todo parecía pesado. Pero en ese momento, cuando sostenía la mano de su hijo y respiraba el aire fresco de la mañana, todo se volvía ligero y lleno de significado. Al acercarse a la casa de la madre adoptiva de Truong, Tieu-nu percibió un ambiente aún más cálido, como si un hogar lleno de amor estuviera esperando a las dos. Dui ya no veía el mundo solo a través de los ojos inocentes de un niño, sino que comenzaba a entender el amor inmenso que su madre le daba, así como la conexión que existía entre todos en esta vida. Y así, bajo la luz de la mañana, mientras caminaban con pasos suaves por el sendero del pueblo, Tieu-nu y Dui continuaron su camino llevando consigo la alegría y el amor hacia un lugar donde la familia, la amistad y los recuerdos hermosos les esperaban. Cuando la luz del amanecer comenzó a extenderse por todo el espacio, Tieu-nu y Dui caminaron por el familiar camino de tierra hacia la casa de la madre adoptiva de Truong. El ambiente tranquilo de la mañana con la suave brisa que soplaba hacía que todo a su alrededor se sintiera fresco y lleno de vida. Al acercarse a la pequeña casa, Tieu-nu sintió una sensación de familiaridad, como si el tiempo se hubiera detenido, llevándolos de regreso a un espacio sencillo y sereno. La casa de la madre adoptiva de Truong era pequeña, se encontraba a la sombra de un gran árbol con paredes de ladrillo marrón y un techo de tejas rojas. En el jardín, las plantas estaban frondosas y las flores silvestres florecían como si recibieran a los visitantes con los brazos abiertos. La madre adoptiva de Trong, una mujer pequeña de unos 60 y tantos años, estaba sentada en una silla de madera rústica, con las manos hábiles cosiendo una prenda vieja, cada puntada realizada con destreza y firmeza. La luz del amanecer iluminaba su cabello canoso, haciéndola parecer aún más amable y suave. Tieu Nu y Dui entraron en el jardín y de inmediato la madre adoptiva de Truong levantó la cabeza. Le sonrió con calidez sus ojos llenos de alegría y ternura. En ese momento, Tieu Nu sintió el inmenso amor que ella les brindaba como si fueran hijos queridos que hacía mucho tiempo se habían ido. La madre adoptiva de Trong no dijo nada, simplemente se levantó rápidamente. Sus manos envejecidas pero fuertes los abrazaron, un gesto cálido como si quisiera protegerlos y cuidarlos de todas las dificultades de la vida. Tieu Nu sintió claramente el amor en el abrazo de la mujer. Una sensación de paz que hacía mucho no experimentaba. Ella los condujo al interior de la casa, donde una mesa de madera rústica ya estaba puesta con algunos platos sencillos pero completos, haciendo que el ambiente se volviera aún más acogedor. Dui, con sus grandes ojos, corrió directamente hacia una silla de madera y se sentó observando todo a su alrededor. Tieu Nu se sentó al lado de la madre adoptiva de Trong, y los sentimientos de nostalgia comenzaron a brotar en su corazón. Los tres empezaron a charlar, sus voces suaves pero llenas de preocupación y sinceridad. La madre adoptiva de Trong contó historias pequeñas de la vida cotidiana, recuerdos de Trong cuando era niño, los días en los que ella y su esposo lo cuidaban y se preocupaban por su futuro. Tieu Nu, con una mirada melancólica, también compartió sobre su vida, las dificultades que enfrentaba criando a Dui sola. Sus historias no solo eran palabras, sino fragmentos de un amor inmenso, de sacrificios sin palabras, de los días pasados trabajando y luchando por la vida. Dui se sentó en silencio, pero sus ojos brillaban cuando escuchaba las historias, y de vez en cuando preguntaba a la madre adoptiva de Trong sobre los días pasados, sobre lo que ella había hecho por Trong cuando él era pequeño. La madre adoptiva sonrió, sus ojos brillaron con orgullo al hablar de los logros de Trong, de la madurez que había alcanzado y de lo mucho que lo amaba como a un hijo propio. El tiempo parecía detenerse en ese cálido espacio. Las risas de Tieu Nu, Dui y la madre adoptiva de Trong se mezclaban, creando un cuadro hermoso y lleno de amor. Tieu Nu sintió que aunque la vida tuviera altibajos, el amor familiar era el lugar donde encontraba la fuerza para continuar. La madre adoptiva de Truong, aunque ya mayor, seguía siendo esa madre cariñosa que siempre daba su corazón para cuidar y amar. Cuando el sol alcanzó su punto más alto, los rayos intensos iluminaban el jardín, haciendo que todo a su alrededor brillara con fuerza. Tieu Nu y Dui sabían que era el momento de despedirse. Se levantaron y Tieu Nu miró hacia atrás con los ojos llenos de gratitud al mirar a la madre adoptiva de Truong. Con suavidad inclinó la cabeza y juntó las manos agradeciéndole por la cálida hospitalidad y por los momentos tan cálidos que les había brindado. La madre adoptiva de Truong también se levantó. Sus manos temblaban, pero apretaron con fuerza las manos de Tieu Nu y Dui como si quisiera transmitir todo su amor. Sus ojos reflejaban ternura, preocupación y buenos deseos para ellos. «Vayan con cuidado, espero verlos pronto», dijo con una voz suave pero llena de cariño, como una bendición de paz desde el corazón. Tieu Nu sonrió, una sonrisa suave pero llena de calidez y aprecio. No dijo nada más, solo abrazó a la madre adoptiva de Truong, una vez más sus brazos entrelazados como queriendo aferrarse a esos momentos. Solo un abrazo ligero pero con todo el amor que ella le ofrecía a Tieu Nu y a Dui. Antes de irse, Tieu Nu miró una vez más hacia atrás, viendo a la madre adoptiva parada en la puerta de la casa, observándolos con los ojos llenos de esperanza. Ese espacio tranquilo con las hojas crujientes moviéndose al viento hizo que Tieu-N sintiera su corazón más ligero y en paz que nunca. Sabía que sin importar cuántas tormentas enfrentara ese amor y esa preocupación, siempre serían una fuente de aliento para ayudarla a superar cualquier desafío. Junto a Du y Tieu, Nu salió de la casa de la madre adoptiva de Truong, pero su corazón seguía lleno de los recuerdos cálidos de esos momentos. Sabía que sin importar a dónde fuera su imagen, permanecería siempre en su corazón como una luz que la guiaría cada vez que se sintiera cansada o perdida. Just as they stepped out of the gate of Truong's adoptive mother's house, Tiu Nu and Dui felt the fresh morning air. The gentle breeze rustled the leaves like a soft song from nature. Both of them walked still, carrying the warmth of the meeting they had just shared. The well wishes, the hugs, and the loving gaze of Truong's adoptive mother lingered in Tiu Nu's heart, bringing her a sense of peace, as if the worries and stresses of daily life had suddenly disappeared. Lost in her thoughts, Tiu Nu suddenly stopped. Her gaze was unintentionally drawn to the road ahead where the dirt path curved toward the market. She noticed a familiar figure slowly approaching each step, strong on the familiar road. It was Truong, the man she had always considered a part of her life. He was carrying a wicker basket filled with fresh yellow coconuts, their gentle fragrance making the air around them sweet and pleasant. He had just returned from the market, his face slightly sweaty but his eyes bright with surprise as he saw Tiu Nu and Dui. Truong paused in the middle of the road, still holding the basket of coconuts, staring at Tiu Nu and Dui as if he couldn't believe his eyes. His gaze was one of disbelief, but it quickly softened into a warm smile as if all the worries and exhaustion of the day disappeared when he saw the familiar faces. Tiu Nu looked at him, her heart fluttering lightly. Emotions she had long buried inside her suddenly resurfaced, as if they couldn't be suppressed anymore. The three of them stood still, the distance between them narrowing, and the atmosphere around them was no longer as calm as before. The air seemed filled with mixed emotions, sudden and powerful. Tiu Nu could feel both surprise and relief in Truong's eyes, as if he had been waiting for this moment for a long time, though he had never dared to admit it. Truong put the basket down on the ground and walked toward them with an expression full of longing, wanting to be close to share. Tiu Nu smiled, but her smile was not just for Truong. It was also for everything that had been and everything that lay ahead. She didn't say anything, just silently walked toward him and took his hand, a warm sensation filling her heart. Dui, standing next to his mother, looked up at Truong with curious eyes. The boy didn't fully understand everything around him yet, but he could sense a shift in the atmosphere, the return of someone he hadn't seen in a long time. At that moment, everything around them seemed to stop. The three of them stood there in silence with emotions that couldn't be put into words. Truong looked at Tiu Nu, his eyes gentle, and then he looked down at Dui, smiling in a friendly greeting, as if he had always been a part of their lives. Tiu Nu couldn't hold back the emotions rising inside her. She let out a long sigh as if she had just released an unspoken burden. She felt a rush of emotions, like a stream that had been dammed for so long finally being set free. The years of separation and the hidden sorrows seemed to melt away. She looked at Truong, then at Dui, and in her heart she felt something strong, a love so vast it couldn't be described in words. "Truong, you..." Tiu Nu began but couldn't say anything more. She only needed to look into his eyes and all words seemed unnecessary. Truong smiled and then gently pulled Tiu Nu and Dui closer. His hand softly rested on Tiu Nu's shoulder, a light touch but full of meaning. "It's been a long time, hasn't it?" Truong said, his voice deep but warm. Dui stood beside his mother, his eyes still full of innocence, but he couldn't help but notice that something was different in the air. a strange connection that he couldn't quite explain. Tionu looked at Truong, her gaze full of love, as if telling him everything she couldn't express in words. All the tension inside her melted away, replaced by a feeling of peace, a return of old memories. The three of them stood there under the blue sky in the peaceful countryside, a simple but meaningful moment, like a promise of the future ahead. Without a word, without hurried questions, just a look into each other's eyes full of emotion, the three of them suddenly rushed into a tight embrace. Truong held Tionu and Dui as though they had been apart for a lifetime, as if every second, every minute had been waiting for this moment to reunite. His strong arms wrapped around them, the warmth of the embrace seemed to shield and protect, not wanting any of them to part ways again. The hug was not just a physical closeness, but the merging of deeply buried emotions, emotions that had been suppressed for so long, feelings of love that couldn't be expressed in words now bursting forth powerfully. Tionu could feel the warmth from Truong's embrace, her eyes blurring slightly from the tears that were about to fall. Not from sadness, but from the happiness she was experiencing. It was as if the entire world was reduced to just the three of them, and all the hardships of life suddenly faded away, leaving only love, connection, and the hope for a bright future. Dui, though still young, also felt the power of that embrace. He wrapped his arms around Truong and slightly lifted his head to look at his mother, as if wanting to share this sacred moment with her. Time seemed to stop in that instant. Under the gentle golden light of the morning, the sunbeams filtered through the leaves, shining down on the three standing in the middle of the country road, as if to highlight their emotionally charged reunion. Everything around them seemed to pause, no sounds, no worries from the busy life. It was all just the embrace, the love, the joy overflowing in each of their hearts. The air seemed to grow still, as if to witness this sacred moment, the moment when three people, despite the trials they had faced, were finally reunited in boundless love. Tionu gently lifted her head, her eyes looking at Truong, and in that gaze unspoken words were clearer than any sentence. A soft smile appeared on her lips, but that smile held 1,000 words of thanks, a sense of return of peace she never thought she would find again. Truong looked at her, his eyes full of tenderness, yet there was something deeper, as if he had traveled a long road, and now finally he had found himself in this embrace. The morning air felt fresher than ever. The sound of birds chirping from the branches, the breeze brushing against their skin, and the familiar dirt road beneath their feet made the world feel as though it was in its rightful place again. The three of them, hand in hand, took one step, then another. Each step felt like a promise, a new beginning. Even though there would be challenges ahead, even though the road wouldn't be easy, now they had each other. And that was the most important thing. Tionu, Truong, and Dui walked together under the warm light of the morning, the sunbeams glistening on their hair, in their eyes. They didn't need to say anything more because everything they needed they already had. A family walking hand in hand, stepping forward on a new road. A road not only filled with love but also with hope, resilience, and belief in a bright future. And in this moment all the pain, all the worries seemed to disappear, leaving only happiness flooding each of their hearts. Every step they took was a statement that no matter how many challenges life may bring, as long as love is the driving force, anything can be overcome. Three people, three hearts continuing to write their own story. A story not just about reunion but also about the steadfastness and strength of love. Tionu, Dui, and Truong walked together in the quiet countryside, the sound of their footsteps echoing on the familiar dirt path. The morning light filtered through the trees, and the gentle breeze seemed to soothe the worries and tension in each of their hearts. Truong held Tionu's hand, his gaze filled with emotions that were hard to describe, as if everything else in life no longer mattered, only this moment. Only the three of them walking together on the road of love and hope. Dewey walked beside them, his eyes curious as he took in everything around him. He didn't fully understand everything that was happening, but the feeling of family closeness and love surrounded him, filling his heart with warmth and peace like never before. He could sense a significant change in the atmosphere, and even though he couldn't express it in words, he knew that today was a very special day. They passed through familiar paths, green rice fields and humble houses with old tiled roofs, but Tionu's heart was filled with a happiness she couldn't explain. This was the first time in many years that she could feel such peace and safety. It wasn't because the place was beautiful or perfect, but because she had Truong by her side and they had spent valuable time together. Finally, they reached Truong's mother's house. The small wooden house stood in the middle of a lush garden, surrounded by thriving trees, creating a peaceful and serene space. Tionu had visited here a few times before, but today her feeling was different. Something had changed. She wasn't sure what made her heart race, whether it was the anxiety of meeting Truong's mother again or the mixed emotions from the past. Truong looked at Tionu, his eyes gentle but filled with some worry. He knew this wasn't just a simple reunion between his mother and Tionu. It was a turning point in their lives. After all these years of separation, after the struggles and challenges, they were finally able to stand together, facing what had happened and ready to embrace the future. Truong gently took Tionu's hand and pulled her closer to the door where his mother was waiting to greet them. Truong's mother, an elderly woman with silver hair and a face marked by the passage of time, still had bright eyes filled with love and hospitality. When she saw Truong, a wide smile immediately appeared on her face. She quickly stepped out the door, her arms open as if to embrace her son. Truong stepped into her arms and they hugged tightly, emotions rising in both of them. Tionu stood to the side, watching the scene with a heart full of emotion. This was the first time she had witnessed the moment of reunion between mother and son after so many years apart. Truong's mother looked at Tionu with warm eyes, and her hands opened as if to welcome her. "My daughter, welcome," she said, her voice warm and full of love. Tionu couldn't help it. She stepped closer and bowed her head. "Hello, Grandma. I'm so happy to meet you." Truong's mother quickly embraced Tionu, her arms tightening as if to convey all her affection. "I'm sure I'll love you like I love my own son," she said. Then stepped back slightly to observe Tionu, her gaze filled with tenderness. "You're the first one Truong has brought home. I'm so happy to see you." Truong smiled, looking at his mother and then at Tionu. His feelings were hard to describe, both happy and moved. He never expected this moment to come so quickly. He had thought it would never happen, but now everything felt like a dream he never wanted to wake up from. The three of them sat down at the table where Truong's mother had prepared a simple but complete meal with familiar family dishes. The small room became cozy and filled with laughter. Truong's mother asked Tionu about her life, about the challenges she had faced. Tionu shared her stories about her life and the challenges she had overcome. But she never forgot to mention Truong, who had always been by her side throughout the years. Truong didn't say much, just listened, occasionally smiling when Tionu spoke of the beautiful memories of them. Dewey sat next to Truong's mother, his eyes bright as he listened to her stories from the past about the time she had raised Truong. The boy curiously asked her about the dishes, about the old days when Truong was a mischievous boy who often made her worry. Her stories made the atmosphere even warmer and more intimate. When the meal was finished, Truong's mother stood up, gently cleaning the table, and then turned to look at Tionu and Truong. "Do you know," she began, "I've always hoped that one day our family would reunite and we would sit together at the dinner table like this." Tionu felt the sincerity in her words. She turned to look at Truong, their eyes meeting in a moment of silence, but in their hearts everything was clearly said. Nothing was more important than family love and connection. At the end of the evening, Truong, Tionu, and Dui stood up preparing to leave. Truong's mother saw them to the door, but before they left, she hugged Tionu once more, saying, "You're a part of this family, and I hope we'll see each other again soon." Tionu smiled warmly, feeling as if her heart had found a place to return to. As they stepped outside, the evening sunlight shone on the three of them, its gentle light making everything seem more beautiful. They walked together in silence, but each step was full of appreciation, full of hope for a brighter future.